The Chicago Bears snuck into last year's playoffs with an 8-8 record. Despite a losing streak by the middle of the regular season, they got hot and edged the Arizona Cardinals and the Minnesota Vikings for the 7th spot in the NFC playoffs. Mitchell Trubisky showed poise during that stretch, while their defense played to expectations. Unfortunately, their campaign ended with a wild-card loss to the New Orleans Saints. Granted that they barely made the postseason, they must be improving their roster during this offseason. But I can't understand what the heck are they doing. For starters, I'm not sure how much of an upgrade Andy Dalton is from Trubisky. But after what we now know, Dalton might have been a plan B all along. Apparently, the Bears offered 3 first-round draft picks, a 3rd rounder, and 2 starters to the Seattle Seahawks for Russell Wilson. But despite that package, Seattle had the leverage. Wilson is under a huge contract, and perhaps the team wants to scorn him as well for criticizing their offensive line and subtly their front office. Wilson identified Chicago as one of the destinations that he would like to consider a trade with. Unfortunately, the Seahawks had all the reasons to say no. Wilson is still a better option at quarterback than who the Bears have. Plus, if Wilson went to Chicago, Seattle might be getting late first-round draft choices anyway. Likewise, draft picks offer no uncertainty, unlike players who've proven their talent in the NFL. Seattle doesn't want to be the laughingstock in the ultra-competitive NFC West, which will happen if they lose their Super Bowl winning quarterback. Interesting side note though, could it be that Trubisky was one of the starters that Chicago offered to Seattle? Perhaps they were confident enough that the deal will push through that they didn't really thought of a backup plan. Anyway, with Wilson not coming to Seattle and Trubisky, well, they're not sold with him because who is? So they had to settle with Andy Dalton brother, who was promised the starting quarterback position. However, there's a possibility that the Bears might screw Dalton as well because apparently Chicago is still interested with Deshaun Watson, as revealed by NFL Network's Ian Rappaport when he guested at the Pat McAfee show. Okay, so Watson is facing a serious crisis right now with all the sexual allegations, but that's a subject for another matter and we will not delve into it. Still, Chicago would love to have the defending passing yards leader and might offer some package that they did for Seattle, or maybe better package than what they offered to the Seahawks. However, there's a slim chance of it happening because Watson would rather play in either the New York Jets or the Miami Dolphins. But if this trade will push through, because Texans executive Jack Easterby might not want a quote-unquote unclean player in Watson given his religious background, Dalton is on his way to Houston. However, there's a stronger chance of this not happening because of the controversy that Watson is currently dealing with. He'd rather clean his name first before discussing the next team that he will play for. So instead of getting more weapons for Mitch Trubisky, who is an okay choice at quarterback, and offering Allen Robinson a long-term deal, the Chicago Bears are left with an aged Andy Dalton and Robinson, who is unwilling to sign their franchise tag. That's it, that's their offense. Throw in David Montgomery as well, and those are your 3 options and nobody else. I feel sorry for the Bears or the defense rather of the Bears, because they're holding their end of the bargain. Khalil Mack and the boys are doing a pretty good job, but they're losing one significant piece in Kyle Fuller as well, and it's hard to replace that kind of a player. But in the offense versus defense scheme of things, I think that the defense of the Bears is holding their ground, while the offense is in tatters. Likewise, does Chicago have a quarterback curse? Seems like since time immemorial, ever since Sid Luckman played like decades or eons ago, their best quarterback since then has been Jay Cutler. Okay, you can argue there was a Jim McMahon at the middle of that timeline, but let's face it, the 85 Bears or those 80s Bears were more defense than offense because of that 46 scheme by Buddy Ryan. I mean, McMahon was okay, but the heart and soul of the offense was really Walter Payton, not Jim McMahon and not even Willie Gault, their top wide receiver. So with Jay Cutler being their best quarterback for decades after Sid Luckman, does Chicago have a quarterback curse as well? I mean, Trubisky could have been an okay player, he could have played well, but is it possible that the destination Chicago does just screw their quarterbacks once they play there? But going back to the present, I believe that the Bears will still be in a position to play in the playoffs or compete in the postseason had they retained Trubisky and stockpile weapons around him. I believe that they have a chance to be better or maybe advance beyond the wild card round. Robinson was the only viable target he had all season after all, so if they add one more wide receiver, perhaps Will Fuller, before he signed with his new team, then there's a chance that the Bears would have a better record in 2021. Yes, Trubisky never lived up to Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, the two quarterbacks that were drafted after him, and sad to say it's a curse because he will forever be linked to those two quarterbacks. But is he worse than Andy Dalton? On a player-by-player basis now, would you rather have Andy Dalton than Mitch Trubisky, who has an upside, while Andy Dalton might have a few more years left and had his best years behind him rather than in front of him? He had his struggles, yes, but he certainly had his moments as well, talking about Mitch Trubisky. So there's promise, and the more that you constantly work on those promising moments, who knows? He might be a better quarterback as well. Now, they're facing more answers than questions talking about the Chicago Bears because apparently they have no idea what they're doing in this free agency. Rather than improving their roster, they're dragging it to the ground. With Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and more importantly Aaron Rodgers playing in the same division, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears will be the odd man out in the NFC North. And for all we know, Trubisky will now happily hold the clipboard in Buffalo, study under Brian Daboll, and back up Josh Allen. And if he does well in Buffalo for the spot time that he has, he can sign elsewhere and have his revenge from his old team. If you did like this video, please like it, please subscribe to the What's On Sports channel, and please share our videos. And we offer daily content of your favorite sports topics and the interesting sports discussions as well. Once again, this has been your sports nerd Lance Fernandez, always telling you that life is a ball. Never give up until the final buzzer.